Welcome to the Daily Insider here on VegasInsider.com. I am Kevin Rogers and looking forward to a big show today. Looking ahead to college football on Saturday, the showdown in the swamp between Alabama and Florida. Also, we'll hit on a couple other college matchups as well as the big NFL card for week 2. We saw Washington beat New York last night. We'll talk about that as well. Mark Franco and Brian Edwards, they are on standby, and we will have them coming up in just a moment. Before we get to them, I want to first tell you about WinBet. And in which we have Brian Edwards and Mark Franco joining us. And guys, good to talk to you again. Let's first start with last night. The Giants blow the, I don't want to say blow a big lead, but the Giants had opportunities in that game. They cover as an underdog. Game easily goes over the total last night. The football team won 30-29. And guys, your thoughts on what you saw last night from New York and Washington. Start with you, Mark.
Well, the Giants improved a little bit. They were able to run the ball with some consistency. And, there was a lot of sharp people. I didn't touch the total in last night's game, but there was a lot of sharps for good reason that were on the under in that game. And obviously the game just goes flying over the total. I think the Redskins, their front seven was a little bit disappointing, but Redskins are going to be there all year. They're going to be probably the best team, in my opinion, in the NFC East. Giants still look like they have a way to go to improve. Their defense didn't play well at all last night.
I loved how my buddy Caden Smith was bullying Chase Young all night. I wonder if Joe Judge let Dexter Lawrence get on the airplane. And I want to know you guys' opinion. Did y'all think Jones overthrew Galladay on that bomb that hit him right in the hands? I mean, I thought Galladay should have had that. I was with Caden Smith is from down here. I was at some friends. We were all buddies with him, and we were watching, and they were getting on the Jones for overthrowing it. I was like, he's a professional receiver. Hit him right in the hands. What y'all think on that bomb?
Should have caught the ball, no question about it.
Absolutely.
100% agree with you. When it hits your hands like that, you got to catch it.
Why was he screaming at Jones on the sidelines? That was weird.
Probably just out of frustration. That's how the Giants are going to be, I think, all year long.
And now, guys, the Giants are 7-1 against the spread as a road dog under Joe Judge. Only 2 straight-up wins. Daniel Jones was 4-0 against Washington going into last night. He played well enough to get, for some reason, Daniel Jones plays well against this Washington team.
Go ahead, Mark.
They're one of the better defenses in the NFC East, no question. And, he was able to play well enough to get the win. It's a shame that the Giants kind of blew that game.
Yeah, I mean, that guy did not need to hold on that great touchdown run he had. The wide receiver down the field, that wasn't even necessary. That guy wasn't tackling him. I thought Jones played well, certainly well enough to win. Galladay's got to catch that ball. Receiver shouldn't have been holding, and Dexter Lawrence shouldn't have been offsides.
So now we got one game in the books for week 2 in the NFL. I want to go back to week 1 with you guys, and I'll start with you, Brian. What did you learn from week 1 in the NFL? I mean, we saw the dogs dominate. Now 13-4 against the spread, the underdogs so far through the first week and one game. But what did you pick up? What stuck out to you from week one?
Big win for Pittsburgh. Jameis Winston has his confidence back, and maybe he's got a good relationship with Sean Payton. The dysfunction with Aaron Rodgers and the brass in Green Bay is off to a rocky start. My Falcons look horrible, and they took on the opening drive, they had 6 snaps in the red zone, and they had Kyle Pitts on the sidelines, which will perplex me until the end of time. The Titans, what was up with them? Kudos to Arizona and Kingsbury. Thought Stafford looked good in LA. There's a few thoughts.
Mark?
Well, for me, I learned this a long time ago in this business, and what you cannot do, and it's not easy, but you cannot put too much stock into what you've seen in week one. Obviously, the Packers getting waxed. They're not going to be that bad of a team. Things I was impressed at was the Saints defense played great in that game too, but Aaron Rodgers looked like he had no interest in being there playing in Jacksonville, and I think that'll change. They got a cupcake game, so to speak, on Monday night against Detroit. Arizona was the shocker for me. I went 5-1 last week. The only losing pick I had, I gave out on the show with you last week, Kev, and that was the Tennessee Titans. I thought that they'd be able to run the ball, throw the ball. If I saw that final score, didn't know who won the game, I would have pegged the Titans to win by that. But give Arizona credit. They came out with a really good offensive game plan. I mean, Tennessee is not a good defense to begin with, but they knew exactly what they were doing, and it just seemed like I was watching a lot of games, but every time I looked up, Arizona scoring again. And the defense obviously played tremendous with Chandler with 5 sacks. Other takeaways, 49ers up huge. I was in the book. Everybody's, I got a winner on that. I got a winner on that. I was fortunate enough to bet it early in the week when the line was 7.5. That line was as high as 9.5 last Sunday morning here in Vegas, and Detroit comes storming back and gets kind of a lucky cover if you bet the game late. Chiefs were impressive. I had the Brownies last week plus the points. They played a great game up until that last drive when Mayfield couldn't get the job done, but it's almost a given that Mahomes is going to come back in games like that. But one thing about Kansas City, as good as they've been, and we all pretty much know this, their against the spread record has just been crap over the last year or 2 years. That's really my short take on what happened in week one. And again, I try not to put too much stock in what you saw in week one. No team is that good and no team is that bad.
I'm glad you caught yourself there, Mark, with that. You're about to drop something there.
Yeah. I just in the nick of time.
I'll add a few more things. Dak Prescott and Joe Burrow back from injury, looking really good, and the Jags are going to be an unmitigated disaster under Oscar Mayer.
I want to get to one thing that Mark said about the Chiefs, that's now 2-10 against the spread, their last 12. But they've now won, last week was at Arrowhead, but they've won now 10 in a row on the road, and I think it's 15-1 the last 16 on the road. The only loss was that meltdown against Tennessee a few years ago. So what are your thoughts, guys, on the Sunday night game now in Baltimore between the Chiefs and the Ravens? And everyone knows Lamar struggled against them. The Ravens blew that game at Vegas on Monday night. Chiefs 3-0 the last 3 years against Baltimore. And it feels like the whole world's on Kansas City. But what are your guys' thoughts on this Sunday night showdown in Baltimore?
Last year, the Ravens were a 3-point favorite in this game. So is it a big difference a year later? Not so much, but the Ravens are just so banged up that I think the line is justified. I think 3.5 is a tad high. I think it should be Kansas City -3. Don't know if I'm going to get involved in this game yet, but the over, as high as it is at 55, does look kind of tempting because the Ravens defense, especially their secondary, they're just not that good this year. And, we saw Kansas City's defense last week, and Baker Mayfield and the Browns offense had a really good game against them. So tough to lay 3.5 instead of 3. I might have to pass on the side, not sure yet, but as high as the total is at 55, looks tempting to me to go over.
I slightly lean to Baltimore, but it's not. I mean, because it's Sunday night, I might decide to play it just as a standalone game. But if it was in the afternoon, it would be a pass, and it may still be a pass.
All right, now let's look at some of the other matchups coming up, guys, on Sunday. And let's begin, Brian. You just mentioned his name, Urban Meyer. And, things didn't look too good for Urban in his debut. Jacksonville closed as a favorite against Houston, and they got blown out of that game. And the rumors are, a few days later, is Urban going to leave? Would he take the USC job? I never thought he'd take the USC job, but I could see him just leaving because it's going to be too much for him. But now he returns for the home opener. They take on Denver. Broncos are really impressive against the Giants last week. So do you ride Denver again and just fade Urban at this point?
Absolutely. And Denver looked good last week, and Bridgewater looked good. Now, traveling east back-to-back weeks is usually a slight red flag, but, fading the Jags overwhelms any slight red flags out there. I recommend fading the Jags until they cover, but probably come right back to fading them again when they do cover, but all over Denver this week.
Mark, you have any opinion on this game?
Well, we did not talk before the show, but Brian, you just took the words right out of my mouth.
Well, brilliant minds think alike, Franco.
This is a game that 6 on the road, back-to-back road games. Usually you would kind of shy away from that, but I cannot find any reason whatsoever to take Jacksonville. I just think Urban Meyer's in over his head. And let's keep in mind that, last year, the last few years, the Jacksonville defense has just been horrible. And I don't see that changing. Will Teddy Bridgewater light up the scoreboard? Probably not, but I think he could play more than efficient football against this defense. And the Broncos are able to run the ball. There's a lot of talent on the Broncos. They're one of the teams I think that can be in the mix in the AFC playoffs. Tough division with obviously with the Chiefs dominating that division. But this is a game that I'm going to squarely be on, and I'm going to be on the Broncos side, no doubt. I'm not going to let the inflated line affect me. I think the look-ahead line before last Sunday, I think it was Broncos -6. Broncos -3. Now after what we saw in week 1, obviously the line has went up, Broncos -6. But I see no reason they can't win this game by double digits.
I just want to remind you guys that the last quarterback Jacksonville defeated is now retired.
Philip Rivers?
That's right. He's now a high school coach in Alabama. That's the last quarter. I can't believe it. They've lost 16 straight games. That's pretty crazy. They won the opener last year, and they haven't won since. Now, I want to look at the Bengals and the Bears in Chicago, and this is a very interesting matchup for a lot of reasons. Number one, I feel like a lot of Bears fans are calling for Justin Fields. They, the Red Rifle, they don't want him anymore. Andy Dalton last week, he's just shot. As simple as that. He was a good quarterback at one time. Now he's done. Now he's gets the reunion against his old team at Soldier Field. Cincinnati coming off that overtime win over Minnesota, so back-to-back games against NFC North opponents, and the Bears a slight favorite here. A lot of pressure on Chicago. See if Fields comes back in the game. He had that touchdown last week. But start with you, Mark. Your thoughts on the Bengals and the Bears?
Probably a game I'm not going to be involved in when my picks are available on VI. But give the Bengals credit. They played good last week. They went back and forth with Minnesota. Were able to get that win in overtime. I'm not sure what the Bears coaching staff is thinking. Why keep Andy Dalton in there? For what reason? You're not going to go to the playoffs. You're not a playoff team. Justin Fields should be the starting quarterback. Throw him in there. It's been done before. And I think that's the best option that the Bears have going forward. But my knee-jerk reaction when I first saw this game was I want to take the Bengals. But line has dipped down. I think it opened at 4. The look-ahead was 4, went down to 3. Now we're looking at 2.5 just about everywhere.
I'm on the Bengals. Like Franco said, Dalton is shot. The Soldier Field crowd is going to be all over him early and often. They're going to be calling for Fields. But this is definitely 50-50, like half fading the Bears, but half on the Bengals. Burrow looked good last week, 20 of 27, 261 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. I think Joe Mixon's become one of the top 10 running backs in the NFL. And Burrow's got an outstanding set of receivers: T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase, and they hold Dalvin Cook, one of the top 2 or 3 running backs in the league, to 61 yards on 20 attempts. Bengals went outright. Take the 2 if you want. If you can get plus 120 or plus 125 on the money line, do that, or either or, whatever.
Now, another early contest on Sunday, New Orleans and Carolina, which is, again, another very intriguing game just because on one side with New Orleans, they come out and they just destroy Green Bay when a lot of people thought, all right, the Saints got removed from the Superdome due to Hurricane Ida. They're displaced for a few days. They're facing Green Bay. And yet it didn't matter. The Packers were the ones that looked lost. The Saints looked focused. And you got the good Jameis this past Sunday. He had 5 touchdown passes. And now they go from a home underdog, neutral site, to now a road favorite against Carolina. And the Panthers, Sam Darnold had a really good first half against the Jets, against his old team. They hold off New York. So Carolina's 1-0. Now they flip to a home underdog in this spot in Charlotte. And Brian, your thoughts on this NFC South matchup?
Well, the Westgate and BetMGM still have it at 3. Now I need it at 3, or buy the half point, or go to the Westgate or BetMGM. But if you can get 3, I like the Saints. And they've dominated in Charlotte their last 4 trips, 3 blowout wins, including 33-7 last year, 42-10 in 2019, 34-13 in 2017. That Saints defense that was the worst game I've ever seen Aaron Rodgers play, I think. Or maybe that Tampa game last year, he was awful as well. But, Saints defense. Now, look, this thing can turn on Jameis at any time now. I don't put it past him to start turning the ball over again. But with that defense, got to go Saints.
Well, for me, again, I hate to keep harping on the look-ahead lines here, but again, this is a case of what you saw last, and that was the Saints destroying the Packers. The look-ahead line was a pick 'em in this game. Now you got the Saints 3, like Brian said, at a couple of shops around town, but mostly 3.5s out there. I'm probably not going to get involved in this game, although the Saints have a very solid, I don't have it in front of me, a solid against the spread record on the road. And Carolina wasn't all that impressive last week. I mean, they did beat the Jets, but, they weren't overly in a situation where, they destroyed the Jets. So this game's probably going to be a pass for me just because in the Westgate Super Contest, the line is 3.5. Obviously, like Brian said, I'd be much more tempted than to have the Saints laying 3 rather than that hook.
Now let's take a look, Mark, at
hold on, let me interrupt you. I'm sorry,
go ahead, Go ahead.
The Saints are 18-6 against the spread on the road since 2018. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, that's a pretty good percentage for me.
Let's go to the 49ers and the Eagles. And San Francisco, as we talked about before, Detroit, they built that huge lead. We saw Trey Lance come in, throw a touchdown pass, but we know it's still Jimmy G's team at this point. But San Francisco now back out east, facing Philadelphia, who no one saw that happen last week with the Eagles. You think maybe they keep it close or beat the Falcons, but not destroy them like the way they did. Jalen Hurts played well. We saw Devontae Smith with a touchdown early in that game. So now the Eagles back at home, short underdog against San Francisco. And Mark, you think San Francisco keeps us up or Philadelphia pulls another underdog win?
Well, the Eagles were impressive last week, but again, that's just one game. The interesting thing for the 49ers is after they left Detroit, instead of flying back to the Bay Area, they went to West Virginia. So they're in West Virginia this whole week practicing, getting ready for the game in a short, hop, skip, and a jump from West Virginia to Philly. So I think that's a good move. So I'm not going to be worried about them playing an early game in the Eastern time zone again. But the 49ers are the right side here. I think 3 is a good number. I think the line should be a little bit higher. But again, it's adjusted because of what we saw by the Eagles last week. And again, Brian, you can attest for this. Are the Falcons' offense just garbage or what? I mean, they couldn't do nothing in the preseason. And I didn't see a lot of this game because it was a blowout early on. But the Falcons just can't score.
Oh, man. We'll see. I mean, if they don't have Kyle Pitts on the field for 6 red zone snaps, they ran it well, or they had 2 very good drives to start the game, and then it was just nonsense, garbage the rest of the game. So until they show it to me, thumbs down to my new coach and the Falcons offense and the whole team in general.
Now, the next game I want to look at, the Texans and the Browns in Cleveland. And Browns a double-digit favorite here after they blew that game at Kansas City last week. We know the Browns have the ability to win in Kansas City. They just couldn't do it. And, fighting it out with the Ravens and the Steelers for the top spot in the AFC North. But now Cleveland, a heavy favorite. Odell Beckham Jr. is not going to play this week. The Texans pulled off a really nice win in week 1, but they move up now. They're not facing Jacksonville anymore. They're facing Cleveland. Heavy dog, though. But your guys' thoughts on this game in Cleveland coming up on Sunday?
I lean Texans. I know it was the Jags, but Tyrod Taylor looked outstanding. They still have some guys on offense. Brandon Cooks. I lean Texans. Big number.
Well, you kind of stole my thunder again there, Brian, because I couldn't lay 13 with the Browns. Like you said, Tyrod Taylor and the Texans offense, which I expect them to be able to do all year, is going to put points up on the board. It's their defense that's not that good. Will the Browns kind of have a little bit of a letdown spot? I know it's only week 2, but to lose the game like they lost last week at Kansas City when they were leading for the majority of the game, that's going to sting a little bit. So I haven't done my final homework on this game yet, but I would definitely lean towards taking the Texans at 13.
Now, the next game I want to look at with you guys is the Vikings and the Cardinals as they hook up in Arizona. And look, Mark talked about it, and it's so true about what you saw last week, transferring it to this week, that Arizona had probably the most dominating performance by any team, and they did it as an underdog. And now Arizona goes from a road dog to a home favorite here against Minnesota. And Minnesota closed out last season 0-7 against the spread, their final 7. They were down 2 touchdowns at Cincinnati last week, still came back and tied it, and had the ball in overtime in Cincinnati territory before Dalvin Cook fumbled. And the Bengals recovered. They went down, kicked a field goal to win it. But now the Vikings flipped to a dog here. Cardinals flipped to a favorite. So what's now going to be the perception of both these teams, Mark?
Well, I think the perception is given to the Cardinals because they did have such a dominating game. A lot of people expect the Cardinals to make the playoffs. It's going to be tough in the best division in football, in my opinion, which is the NFC West. The Vikings defense did not play well last week at all. Their offense was able to move the ball against Cincinnati. I could not take Minnesota on the road. Second straight week on the road. I think the number's right on here. I kind of had the Cardinals -4. Current number's 3.5. I think the total might be a good option because the total right now is hanging at 50.5. I think both teams are going to put up at least 3 touchdowns apiece. So, and then field goals on top of that. So I think over the total in this one being played in Arizona in the Dome. And I think both teams are going to be successful on the offensive side of the ball.
This is a pass for me. I made Arizona 4. I think it's a good number. I don't want anything to do with it.
Short and sweet, Brian. All right. That's it for NFL. Let's talk some college football now. And Brian, let's move to the big game in Gainesville and Alabama playing Florida. The Crimson Tide, again, which I find fascinating. First time Alabama and Florida are playing in the regular season since 2014. They played in the SEC title game 3 times, including last year, but they have not played since 2014. Tell your conference to fix that.
I think there's been enough upheaval about it that I think they are, and especially with Oklahoma and Texas coming in. But I think the play in this game is the over. These teams combined for 98 on December 19th in Atlanta, last December, obviously. Now, both teams lost a lot of offensive weapons, a lot of NFL players, a lot of first-round picks. But Hey, it's just rinse repeat with Alabama. Bryce Young looks every bit as good as his predecessors, and they got 44 against Miami, and that was with kind of hitting the brakes late third, early fourth offensively, and had 31 at halftime, albeit against Mercer. And Florida's left a lot of points out there on the board, and I know it's just a 2-game sample, and it was USF and FAU, but Florida is number 1 in the nation in rushing yards, and they are number 3 in total yards. And there's a couple key players missing on defense for both teams. Ventrell Miller, Florida's leading tackler last year, third team All-SEC selection, out for the year with a torn bicep tendon sustained last week in Tampa. And then Alabama's Christopher Allen's out for the season from the Miami game. And their other star linebacker, Will Anderson, got chop blocked against Mercer, left the game with a knee injury. But Saban said on his call-in show last night that he did more at practice yesterday than he had all week and was calling him day to day. So I think he might play, but he might not be 100%. I like the over, and I do like the Gators a little bit. Now I don't fade Sabes that much these days, and I usually bet on him. But I think this one's a little inflated. I think the Gators might be better than they were last year, and it was a one-possession game most of the fourth quarter last year, and that was at a neutral venue. This is Bryce Young's first career road start, and this is the first game of significance at the Swamp with full capacity since 2019, and it's the first time a number 1 team has come to Gainesville since Ken Dorsey and the Canes in 2002.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a while for that. So, and yeah, you don't see Florida as that big of a dog, much less in the Swamp. So we'll see if Danny Mullen, if he's got a good game plan here against Nick Saban. Now, the night game, this is actually a very underrated matchup in the ACC. Virginia faces North Carolina, and what a lot of people probably don't know is that Virginia has beaten North Carolina 4 straight years. Last year, they won, that was Halloween night in Charlottesville, 44-41, even though Carolina had 536 yards of offense. The Cavaliers beat the Tar Heels as 7.5-point dogs. Now they're road dogs, obviously, here against UNC. We know what happened with the Tar Heels. They lost the opener to Virginia Tech. They bounced back last week. But, Brian, your thoughts here with Virginia, who, again, look, I don't care if they played Illinois, and Illinois is not great. They still dominated them. And so far, 2 dominating wins, not great competition. William & Mary and Illinois. But now Virginia goes in as a dog against a team they've had success with.
Yeah, I was leaning UVA anyway, and then what you pointed out, I didn't realize the recent head-to-head domination, and as I looked at the game closer, I saw that, and then I was, boom, I'm in. UNC looked awful against Va-Tech. They got right last week against Georgia State, but doesn't look like Georgia State's going to be that good this year. I know they're missing Pinckney, their star receiver, but still got blasted by Army and UNC. But UVA, Brendan Armstrong looks really good. 7-1 TDI&T ratio, a couple of rushing touchdowns. The Cavs are 7-4 against the spread. Last 11 as road dogs. I prefer Bronco Mendenhall to Mac Brown. Like UVA plus the points.
And let's finish off with this one, guys, out west. Fresno State and UCLA. They meet up at the Rose Bowl, and the Bruins, 11-point favorites. They had that big win a few weeks ago against LSU. Now let's see what they do here in the favorite role against Fresno State, a pretty good team out of the Mountain West. Mark, your thoughts on this game between the Bulldogs and the Bruins?
I really like this Fresno State team. They've got some moxie about them. They can put up points. I think this line is a little bit inflated. UCLA, pretty much dominated that game against LSU like we talked about a couple of weeks ago. They were very physical. I think Fresno State is a physical enough team to be able to go toe-to-toe with UCLA, and probably not a lot of people realize this, but Fresno won each of the last 3 meetings with UCLA, dating back to their most recent, I believe, was in 2018, which was Chip Kelly's first season there at UCLA. But this is one game I am squarely on. I've already posted it on Vegas Insider and more than happy to share it with everybody. I got the Fresno State Bulldogs plus the 11.
I lean that way as well. I was hoping maybe we get some line movement and get a better number. I'm probably going to play Fresno. They are 8-2 against the spread, and their last 10 as road dogs. Jake Hayner is a very solid quarterback. Was signed by Chris Peterson at Washington coming out of high school. And they went toe-to-toe with Oregon 2 weeks ago. And that was Oregon with their star Kayvon Thibodeau and the freshman 5-star linebacker Flo, who's now out for the season. So the UCLA having 2 weeks to prepare kind of concerns me, and obviously a fourth game in 4 weeks for Fresno. But I lean Fresno. I might end up taking them. We'll see.
All right, gentlemen. Very informative stuff from both of you, and always happy to have you on the live stream. Mark Franco and Brian Edwards, and you can find their picks at VegasInsider.com for NFL and college football. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Best of luck with your picks, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Kev. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks,
All right,
K-Rod.
guys.
Good seeing you, Franco.
You too. Take care.
Those two guys, they are, you know what they are? They've been around a long, long time with Vegas Insider, and it's good to have them join us here on the show here on this Friday, which always is very busy as far as college talk, NFL talk, and we're still about a week away in college football from getting a lot of conference games. I know we have Alabama, Florida. There's a couple of Conference USA games. You have Georgia, South Carolina as well in the SEC. In the ACC, we're starting to ramp up a little bit with conference games with Virginia, Carolina. Florida State looks for their first win. They're at Wake Forest. So we're starting to get that. I believe next week, the Pac-12, they ramp up with their conference play. So, and I know you have USC, Washington State this week, the first game after Clay Helton got fired as head coach of the Trojans. So we'll get more of the conference play starting next week, but at least you have a lot of good matchups. Also Auburn, Penn State on Saturday night, which we didn't hit on as they hook up. But I want to take a look now at each of the matchups inside of the NFL, and we'll begin with that Saints-Panthers showdown in Carolina, in which New Orleans the running joke, I guess, with Jameis Winston is it's almost kind of like you're on the clock with him, that he throws 5 touchdown passes for New Orleans last week against Green Bay, and you're kind of wondering, okay, you had the good Jameis. When do we flip to the bad Jameis? When are we going to get the 3-interception game with Jameis Winston? And he faces Carolina this week, a team that he's seen plenty of times when he was the quarterback of the Buccaneers. And New Orleans has won the last 4 meetings with Carolina. Now, last year when they faced off, the Saints held off the Panthers at home 27-24. And New Orleans won at Carolina in Week 17, 33-7. And sometimes the Week 17 games you got to throw out because they really don't mean much. And we saw that last year with the Chargers. They beat the Chiefs in Week 17, and Kansas City went to the Super Bowl. The Chargers weren't in the playoffs, but they still won the final game. And that's why the Week 17 games are very hard to really take a lot of stock in. But New Orleans, again, they go from a home underdog, not at home, but still an underdog, now to a road favorite against this Carolina team where Sam Darnold played well against the Jets last week. And, hey, for a guy like Sam Darnold, he needs any kind of confidence to get back. And if he's got to beat the Jets to do it, then he's got to beat the Jets. He's facing a good defense this week. Aaron Rodgers wasn't good last week for the Packers, but now we'll see if you get the good Jameis or the bad Jameis when these teams meet up in Charlotte. The Texans and the Browns, they hook up in Cleveland, and the Browns off of this tough loss, really a bad loss to Kansas City. And, you know, you kind of say to yourself in sports, you know, would you rather be Green Bay, who was just embarrassed, just move on? I always like to say burn the tape game where, all right, they know what happened, let's move on. You had no shot, as opposed to Cleveland, where they were in a revenge spot against Kansas City after losing in the second round game to the Chiefs last year. Then they go up 22-10 against the Chiefs last week, and they couldn't hold it. Patrick Mahomes had that long touchdown pass to Tyreek Hill, and it almost felt like the Super Bowl all over again. Like those long pass plays are just backbreakers. And the Chiefs ended up winning that game. The Browns covered. But now Cleveland laying 13 at home against this Houston team who is playing with some confidence. And the Texans really are playing with house money at this point. That the Texans, they beat Jacksonville last week. I guess, you always hear that silly question on TV. Is Houston, I'll say that good, but is Houston better than we thought, or is Jacksonville worse than we thought? I think it's clear that Houston's not as bad as we thought. I'm not ready to say Houston's a playoff team yet, but they're not as bad as we thought, and they still have an experienced quarterback in Tyrod Taylor. So it's not like they're throwing a rookie out there, a sixth rounder who just played well and now he won't play well again. I mean, Tyrod Taylor still has been in the league before. And that was the advantage he had over Trevor Lawrence last week. And Trevor Lawrence is a road favorite, his first NFL game for a team that lost their final 15 games last season. So Tyrod Taylor and the Texans, they're a heavy underdog against Cleveland. I don't really like this game. If you're taking Houston, you're probably thinking they're going to hang, not that they're going to win. Those are always tough, though, to try to take a big underdog hoping they're going to hang around. Cincinnati and Chicago, the Andy Dalton Bowl at Soldier Field. And the Bengals played well last week against the Vikings. Joe Burrow played well. We know that Joe Burrow has been very good as an underdog in his short career. Again, half a season, but he's played well as an underdog. And the Bengals pulled out a really good win, considering they were up 2 touchdowns on the Vikings, and Minnesota came back and tied it. Now the Bengals make the short trip to Chicago, and the Bears, they know the situation with Justin Fields and with Andy Dalton. I do not blame Matt Nagy last week for, lack of a better term, waving the white flag against the Rams, having Andy Dalton play and not having Justin Fields play when the Rams have the best defense in the league. Like, why would you put Justin Fields in that spot? Justin Fields did score a touchdown on a play inside the 5. It was a smart move to get him in. But Fields will eventually play. Chicago's favored. They should be favored. And the numbers dropped a little bit, but I have no problem with Chicago being favored here, because how can you make Cincinnati a favorite anytime? I mean, even with the Bears, uncertainty at the quarterback position, now Joe Burrow's going on the road. And looking back at it last year, I just want to double check this numbers to make sure. People have jumped on Joe Burrow, and as I want to see these numbers as an underdog, and they go to Pittsburgh next week, the Bengals. So they'll have their first conference game, so they'll play 2 NFC teams out of the gate. But the underdog covers for Joe Burrow, because the Bengals had 3 later in the season when Burrow was hurt. They were getting 6 at Cleveland. That Thursday night game, they lost 35-30. The tie against Philadelphia, they were getting 5.5. They were getting 12.5 at Baltimore and lost. Getting 7.5 at Indy, lost by 4. Getting 4.5 at home against Cleveland, lost by 3. Getting 7.5 at home against Tennessee and won outright. And then losing at Pittsburgh, getting 6.5, and then losing at Washington. That was the game Burrow got hurt in. But in the road dog role, I mean, honestly, as a dog just in general, Joe Burrow is 0-5-1. I'm going to count the Washington game, even though he was hurt because he still started that game. 0-2, 3-4, 0-5-1. If you want to be kind and even say Burrow finished the Washington game, fine, 0-4-1. But the point is, Joe Burrow has not won a road game yet in the NFL. The only road game the Bengals won last year came at Houston in Week 16 when Joe Burrow didn't play. So if you want to take the shot with the Bengals, that's fine, but they have not won a road game yet with Joe Burrow as their quarterback. The Raiders and the Steelers in Pittsburgh, and Vegas going east following the huge win over the Ravens on Monday night. A game that it seemed like they were out of several times, down 14-0, down 7 late, and they tied it. Ravens kicked a go-ahead field goal. Raiders tied it. Raiders had opportunities in overtime, blew it, and then they ended up winning in overtime. But Las Vegas, though, now they're an underdog against the Steelers. And Pittsburgh, off a very impressive a road underdog win at Buffalo, down 10-0 at the half. They come back, have a huge second half to beat the Bills. And that was a double revenge game for Pittsburgh as well. But even seeing what John Gruden has done as a road underdog, the numbers to me are not very pretty. All right, road underdog. Now, they lost at New England last year as a touchdown dog. They won at Kansas City getting 11. Okay. Short dog at Cleveland. And they were favorites in some of these other games against the Falcons, against the Jets, against the Broncos. So the Raiders were more of a dog than we thought last year on the road. But as far as their success on the road, beat the Broncos, beat the Jets. I mean, they had success, so I'll give them that. They won at Carolina in week 1 as a favorite. I just don't know if it's going to carry over going into this week. And that's the big question. You know, Derek Carr is facing a better defense this week than he faced last week because Baltimore has their injuries. And it just felt like Derek Carr was just dinking and dunking for the longest time and then had that long pass play to Ruggs late on the 3rd and 10, which helped them tie the game. But everything was short passes, and it worked, and Baltimore just couldn't get him off the field. Now, the Bills face the Dolphins in Miami, and just mentioned Pittsburgh beating Buffalo. So, obviously, big spot for the Bills here because you don't want to fall to 0-2, and the Dolphins would be 2-0, obviously, if they win this game. But the Dolphins did lose to the Bills twice last year, including that 56-26 drubbing in Buffalo in Week 17. And a game that really didn't mean much for the Bills. If memory serves, they were going to be the 2 seed, and they ended up, they beat Indianapolis, they beat Baltimore at home before they lost to Kansas City in the AFC Championship. But Tua Tagovailoa had 361 yards passing against Buffalo. Josh Allen had 3 touchdown passes, but the Dolphins were they couldn't stop him. Josh Allen had a few touchdown passes in the second quarter. Buffalo scored 28 in the second quarter of that game, and they dominated the Dolphins. Josh Allen's been pretty good against the Dolphins in his career. 5 straight wins for Buffalo against Miami, and they scored a lot of points: 42, 31, 37, 31, and 56. They put up a ton of points in those games. So Josh Allen and 5 straight overs for the Bills and the Dolphins. And Miami off this win at New England last week, a rare win at New England. They were 3-17. Their previous 20 visits to Foxborough, 17-16 win, a game they were still outgained by 134 yards, had 259. But Buffalo, a short favorite there against Miami. Another road favorite, a lot of road favorites this week. The Rams go to Indianapolis to face the Colts. And I did like Indianapolis last week against Seattle. They were just punched in the face out of the gate. Now they get another good NFC West team that could be in the Super Bowl. And Matthew Stafford played well, over 300 yards last week, 34-14 blowout of the Bears. I mean, Carson Wentz wasn't terrible, but the defense got totally shredded by Russell Wilson. And for the Colts, they got 3 straight road games after this, and they're not easy. At Tennessee, at Miami, at Baltimore. So to get Seattle, the Rams, Titans, Dolphins, Ravens out of the gate is not a dream scenario for Indianapolis. I guess the only good side is you hold off on Jacksonville and Houston for a while. You get Jacksonville twice on the back end. You get Houston after that gruesome. Well, it's not a horror movie. It feels like it. That tough 3-game stretch, that tough gauntlet. But the Rams, though, a short favorite here. Kind of like the Colts, even though I liked them last week. maybe take another shot with them just because of the perception game. We play the perception game so much in the NFL. Rams are really good. Colts aren't very good. And the Colts are back at home again this week, trying to get it right. And if the Colts lost a close game to Seattle last week, I'd feel differently. But with them getting blown out, Carson Wentz, got to trust him, which I don't love, but what you got to do. Carson Wentz's former team, the Eagles, they faced the 49ers in San Francisco. And as Mark Franco pointed out earlier, the Niners, they go from Detroit to West Virginia for the week. It's pretty smart. There's no reason to fly back to the Bay and then go back to the East Coast. So they stayed in West Virginia for the week. Then they go to Philly to take on the Eagles. And Jalen Hurts, another one of these second-year quarterbacks that won as a dog last week. So the Eagles now back at home. Dog roll against the 49ers. San Francisco looked really good against Detroit last week before the Lions made it interesting in the fourth quarter. But the Niners now a more reasonable favorite, laying just 3 as opposed to 9.5. It got out of control against the Lions last week. San Francisco had some injuries. Now we'll see if they can win this game. The 49ers have been a pretty good road team under Kyle Shanahan, and they've done a lot of that damage even without Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. Now, again, they have Garoppolo healthy, so it's fine. But including last season, 6-3 the last 9 at or away from Levi Stadium, and even going back to their NFC Championship year, they went 7-1 on the road. So they've been a very good road team, San Francisco, believe it or not. The Broncos face the Jags, and the only reason I like Jacksonville here, maybe I'm nuts, again, is perception. Jacksonville was terrible. The Broncos look good. Yeah, the Broncos did look good. They beat the Giants, and now they're facing another substandard team. But Teddy Bridgewater laying 3 against the Giants last week? It's 6 this week against Jacksonville. And the Jags just didn't look good, but you got the home opener this week. 3-point favorite at Houston, now a 6-point dog at home. That's an incredible swing. And that's where you're just almost fading perception. The numbers don't favor Jacksonville in the spot, but you're asking the Broncos to do this again for as good as they were last week against the Giants to now prove it again. Teddy Bridgewater, very good quarterback against the spread as a dog. Now he's a favorite 2 straight weeks. Another spot where you have a road favorite and the Patriots take on the Jets. So Mac Jones, his first road start for New England. And he faces Zach Wilson, another rookie. And for Zach Wilson, not great in his opener against Carolina, but he's now listed as a home dog. Mac Jones, everyone's on him from a good perspective, that he played well against the Dolphins, but they also had a very fortunate roughing the passer penalty in the second quarter, which led to a New England touchdown. And then the Patriots fumbled late. Wasn't Mac Jones' fault, but. And this was a tough one. This is a very tough game just because, if you feel good about the Patriots, you're saying the Jets are a really bad team. That the Patriots with Mac Jones will go in there and win by a touchdown or more. That I'm not 100% confident in. This game between Minnesota and Arizona. Look, I don't care if I'm repeating myself. I really don't. Because this is a perception thing. And Arizona dominated Tennessee last week. Kyler Murray was great. Chandler Jones was great. The Titans stunk. But the Vikings, though, they are a short dog here on the road after they lost to the Bengals last week. And look, they had their issues against the Bengals. They were down early. Kirk Cousins, I'm telling you, Kirk Cousins at times, he plays not great teams and he still struggles. That's what's so frustrating with Kirk Cousins. But yet they still came back and took the lead against or I shouldn't say took the lead, still tied the game against Cincinnati. And yet they found a way to lose in overtime. They did give the ball to their one of the best offensive weapons in Dalvin Cook, and he fumbled. But Minnesota, road favorite last week, road underdog this week. Arizona, how good are they? That's the question. Can Arizona now capitalize off that Tennessee win? Everyone knows what happened at Tennessee last week, but that number's dropped because Arizona was laying 4. Falcons and the Bucks from Tampa. And I do like Atlanta in this game because Falcons looked like crap last week against the Eagles. Short favorite. Now you're getting 12.5. And Tampa Bay off of the Dallas win at the end. And they had a few extra days off. But man, like the Bucks to like 12.5 in this one. I can't think they're that much better than Atlanta. I mean, the Falcons still have a good quarterback in Matt Ryan. And the Falcons, hey, they've been a bad team in the preseason over the years. You wonder if that had something to do with them, just not playing well against the Eagles, no cohesiveness. But now you start fresh, getting 12.5 in a rivalry game. And last year, Tampa Bay played Atlanta. They hooked up in week 17, and Tampa Bay dropped what on them? They had 44-27 win for the Bucks last year in Tampa. That was week 17. The Buccaneers were a 7.5-point favorite. Now they're laying 12.5. I think that's a little bit insane. The Titans and the Seahawks in Seattle. And this is another one where, it's Tennessee just not as good as we thought. Seattle looked really good against Indianapolis last week. So now they get another AFC South opponent. That number's jumping up to 6. I have it here on the screen, 5.5, but it's up to 6. Totals at 54. Seattle, the one good thing is they get the home field advantage back, being back at home at Lumen Field after they didn't have much of a crowd last year due to the pandemic. So now they're going to get the loud-ass atmosphere in Seattle where, Tennessee, it's going to be interesting to see what Ryan Tannehill does this week after the offense just didn't look good last week. But we're seeing a lot of this. See, when you go through these games, when you're going through a lot of these games, number one, the teams that were favorites that now flip to underdogs. All right, let's go through them. The Titans, the Vikings, the Jaguars. It's a lot of decent teams. Okay, I'm not going to say Jacksonville's decent, but decent situations. Carolina, that were favorites last week, they're now underdogs. Now, a couple of them, now I mentioned Titans, Falcons, Vikings all lost. The Panthers ended up winning, but at least 4 underdogs this week that lost last week as favorites. So now, and the Ravens are another one that we'll get to in a minute, but you have a lot of those that that just struggled, that just absolutely struggled. But Tennessee, that's a tough one to me too. Cowboys and Chargers from LA, and the Chargers, they go out east. They beat Washington last week, and now they get Dallas this week, a much better offense. I mean, Washington's offense, yes, Taylor Heineke played well last night for the football team in place of Ryan Fitzpatrick, and we saw Washington put up 30 points. But I still don't like their offense. Dallas, a much better offense. Maybe Dallas not as good defensively as Washington is. But the Chargers are short favorite here, laying 3.5 against the Cowboys. And Dallas in back-to-back road underdog spots. And they have a few extra days off now after the Tampa Bay game. And they go from almost a 10-point dog to a 3.5-point dog. Can they slow down Justin Herbert? That's the big question. But Dallas can fall in an 0-2 hole and still be fine in the NFC East. That's the only division you can do that in. I mean, maybe the AFC South this year. But Dallas getting 3.5, though, showing some respect to the Chargers. Chiefs-Ravens, which we discussed a little bit earlier with Mark and with Brian. And the perception game with not necessarily last week, but more of the last few years with Lamar Jackson losing his 3 career meetings with Kansas City, including last season, and they got blown out at home on that Monday night. And Patrick Mahomes just had pretty good numbers against Baltimore in his career. But again, the Ravens were a 3.5-point favorite last year against the Chiefs. Now they're a 3.5-point underdog in this rematch. And we all saw what happened with Baltimore Monday night against Vegas, losing that game as a road favorite. And now they're a rare home dog. They're 8-2 against the spread the last few seasons as an underdog. So you wonder if you take advantage of that. I feel like a lot of people are on Kansas City this week, that they're totally not giving Baltimore a shot. The final game, speaking of not giving by a shot, the Detroit Lions, they go to Green Bay, and Packers laying 10.5. I think that number's up to 11. It's creeping up there, 10.5, 11. But Green Bay, though, they were bad. I think they all know they were bad. That's still a good Saints team you played. I mean, you didn't get blown out by the Jags or by the Texans. I mean, you played a quality Saints team. Didn't think that would happen. But you're Green Bay, you got to grab this one. I mean, simple as that. Like, there is no two ways about it. You cannot lose to the Lions at home. They swept the Lions last year. The Lions actually, before last year, had some success at Lambeau Field for a few years. Remember, they had that Monday night 23-22 loss they covered in. Matt Stafford had some good games, but Stafford's not there anymore. It's Jared Goff. And Jared Goff, his last road game came against the Packers last year in the playoffs as a member of the Rams. And he didn't look very good. And he doesn't have the Rams defense behind him anymore. I just don't see how. I mean, it feels like Green Bay or pass. I just don't know how you can make the argument to take Detroit here. I'm thinking, I mean, I don't love this game, to be honest, but I just don't know how you back the Lions here in this spot. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, you talk about must win or, must play well game. This is the game. You cannot afford to lose this game. So let's take a look at my best bets for this week. It was kind of forgettable last week, 0-2. I had the Vikings and the Colts. So this week, we're going to go with a couple old NFC West rivals in separate games. The 49ers at Philadelphia. I just think that San Francisco, with their really good road record over the years, and now Jalen Hurts playing a much better opponent than Atlanta, that San Francisco will take care of their business. They're staying out east. I think San Francisco will win that game at Philadelphia. The Falcons, they were horrible last week against the Eagles. Probably the most embarrassing performance of any team. I mean, you can say them and the Titans, but Atlanta was pretty bad. I mean, at least Tennessee played a playoff-type team in Arizona, where Atlanta played a rebuilding team in Philadelphia and still got run out of their own building. But I'll say this about Atlanta. They've been really bad at home. I don't know if Mercedes-Benz Stadium, what it is. They're just having a good home record the last few years, but on the road, they've been a little better. Now you're getting 12.5. I think it's just a massive inflation on that Tampa Bay team. So I'm going to take the points with Atlanta and lay the points with San Francisco as my best bets for this week in the NFL. So before we head out of here, want to remind you about our friends at WynnBET and the specials that you can get at WynnBET. Number one, you can first of all get a $1,000 risk-free bet at WynnBET, and it is available in several states where it's legal: Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Tennessee, Virginia, and now most recently in Arizona. So WinBet now legal to bet in those states you see on the screen there, and a $1,000 risk-free first sports bet. You can get that when you sign up at WinBet. And look, the Wynn casino, it's been around. It's been in Vegas. It's a wonderful casino. And now with the WinBet mobile sports book option, as well as the WinBet casino app, those are available now. If you download the app, if you download it on Android, on the Apple phone, if it's there, and it's a great app for sports betting. And again, check out the states: Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Tennessee, Virginia, and Arizona, who just started their sports betting. Also, WinBet, want to let you know this: they are the official partner of the New York Jets. So if you're in New Jersey, you can go to the WinBet Green Room at MetLife Stadium. And if you're an eligible bettor of legal age, you have a sports book there. So the Jets, they face the Patriots coming up this week. And check that out. WinBet, $1,000 risk-free first sports bet. And find that at the WinBet risk-free app. And we enjoy speaking about our friends at WinBet, and again, legal in the states you see there on the screen. And Arizona, welcome to the sports betting game. And it's going to be very busy out there out west. I am Kevin Rogers. Thank you so much for watching today's edition of the Daily Insider. And don't forget to find our Bet and Collect podcast as well. And you can look ahead to week 2 of the NFL with that. And you can find the podcast on our podcast page, along with the Great Day Nation with Morton Anderson. He has former Bronco safety Steve Atwater, Hall of Famer, and he joins Morton this week and talks some NFL, talk about the Broncos' big win against the Giants last week. So check that out also on our podcast page at vegasinsider.com. And we'll talk to you again next week at noon Eastern here for the Daily Insider on vegasinsider.com. Again, I am Kevin Rogers. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk to you again next week, and best of luck with your bets.